Hello, today I'd like to talk about the ENTJ type. These are the ENTJ's functions compared to ESTJ. ENTJ and ESTJ both have extroverted thinking, but ENTJ has introverted intuition in place of introverted sensing, and also has tertiary extroverted sensing SE, whereas ESTJ has NE, and they both have inferior FI functions. What do these mean? The main difference between ENTJ and ESTJ could be identified through their tertiary function. The tertiary extroverted intuition would give ESTJs a goofy attitude in starting from their 30s, I guess, when they finish developing tertiary NE. And also ESTJ auxiliary SI would give them a memory-based and traditional way of doing things, whereas ENTJ's introverted intuition, auxiliary introverted intuition, would enable ENTJ to analyze risks, foresee problems, and ENTJ will not be that dependent on tradition, but will try to improve the existing system through NI rather than following it through SI in the case of ESTJs. And this is the comparison between ENTJ and INTJ. ENTJ acts dominantly on extroverted thinking, whereas INTJ acts on introverted intuition. This means that INTJ is more focused on the ideal dictated by their dominant introverted intuition, the optimal way of doing things, whereas ENTJ acts on TE, dominant TE, so they use their auxiliary NI to see the optimal that can work out in the external world. So they are more realistic, whereas INTJ is more idealistic. So this is an infographic from the web. ENTJ, the CEO, they are organized, goal-oriented, extremely good communication skills through their dominant TE. They can verbalize their thoughts very clearly and in the real time, very fluently. They are not natural born leaders. They would do good at administration, CEO and entrepreneur, lawyer, judge, manager. They would be wasted in lawyer or judge positions, I guess. So the auxiliary intuition gives the ENTJ some kind of ability to foresee how things might play out, foresee problems, and also an ability to identify the optimal way of doing things. I guess this helps them to optimize systems, deduce ways to optimize existing systems, also to foresee risks and bypass risks. Their tertiary SE develops around 30s, I guess. When it develops, they become more risk-taking. They can choose to avoid risks through their auxiliary NI function, and also they can afford to take risks and act reflexively in the present through their tertiary SE. They become more confrontational. They don't, until 30s they might avoid conflicts, but when their SE develops, they become more impulsive, aggressive. They can become, if need be, more impulsive, aggressive, and confrontational. And later in their 50s or 60s, I guess, they developed inferior FI. It gives them an artistic ability and some kind of passionate demeanor, and I guess they can start to see people as people rather than objects or assets. They can develop feelings, emotions, and I guess until that time they don't feel anything. I have a friend, I guess, who is an ENTJ, and he would tell me that he didn't have any anxieties or feelings of doom or things like that. He doesn't have any feeling impulses, but I saw him. I guess when his plans fail, when their plans fail, ENTJs might have to act on their inferior FI function and might become hysterical or emotional or depressed, which must be quite alien to them, something very quite alien to them. And the TNF function, thinking and feeling functions, I guess, one denotes masculinity, the other denotes femininity. So until they develop FI function, ENTJs are very hyper masculine, I guess, and they must abhor emotionality and femininity, at least in males, I guess. Perhaps they could appreciate it in females, but in males, I guess, they must abhor FI. So they must abhor males using FI and see them as weak or faulty, I guess, or non-useful. So this is a statesman from my country. His name is Mustafa Kemal Atatürk, and he died in 1938. He was born in 1881, I guess, and he was serving as an officer in Ottoman army when Turkey was Ottoman Empire. He was serving as a military officer. He participated in Balkan Wars, I guess, and also Turkish War of Independence. Actually, he also participated in First World War before that. And I guess he's an ENTJ. Then after First World War, he organized, the Ottoman Empire was in ruins, and he organized people into some kind of army. He established a general assembly, a parliament, but a rogue parliament, not acknowledged by the Ottoman Empire, the remnants of the Ottoman Empire, or by the occupation forces, English and French occupation forces then, but he succeeded in driving away the occupation forces. He organized an army out of a country that has come out of First World War and out of wars that have been going on for about 15 years, I guess. So it was no small feat. He could assemble an organized army, and he then moved on to establish the Republic of Turkey as we know it today. These are some more photos of him. This is after the founding of Turkish Republic. Also in his later years, I guess, when he was acting as a president of the Republic. Here he is listening to a citizen. Also, I guess this is in his elderly years. He became more childish. I don't know if this is related to FI or not. Perhaps he became more like an ESFP in later years, acting through his tertiary and inferior functions. This is another character. This is also a monarch, a king. This is from the anime Rage of Bahamut, and this is the king Charios, I think, something like that. His name was King Charios, I guess. He also goes against some dominant power groups to organize some kind of campaign against a greater evil, and he succeeds despite the odds. So he's a very calculating character. He doesn't, for the greater good in his perspective, I guess, to defeat that greater evil or greater threat, he doesn't shy from oppressing people or subjugating his rivals or even his own people. But it turns out in the end of the anime, he was after a more terrible foe. I guess that makes him a neutral character, neither good nor evil, who can act good in a good manner or an evil manner according to his, so as to achieve his goals. So this is a poster I found from where this is another monarch character from another anime, I guess from Fate Apocalypse. This is Gilgamesh character, I guess. He, as you can see, he is depicted very similar to King Charios. I don't know why, but they are more or less depicted like this, ENTJs, and I guess this is a correct identification of an ENTJ. Also, this is Ozymandias character from the movie Watchmen. He also acts behind the shadows for a global chaos but for that cause he sacrifices 15 million people in the process, but he sees it as a necessary sacrifice to save billions around the world. And he appears to be a good person. He acts like a good person, an altruist, but without raising attention, he pursues his own goal, discreetly pursues his own goal and accomplishes it. As you can see, he also looks like the previous examples. It's hard to identify these characters as purely evil characters or chaotic characters, because all of the time, all of these characters are after some goal to bring a better order to the world, despite the odds and regardless of acting in an evil manner or regardless of acting criminally. I guess that's their tertiary SE. They can act inappropriately to achieve their goals. So this is another character from Death Note anime, Light Yagami. He acquires some kind of magical item that gives him power over people, and he decides to use it to rid the world of criminals, but in the process he starts to see himself as some kind of almighty person, and he becomes to enjoy killing people and exerting his will on people. I am not sure whether he is an ENTJ, but because he even though he's calculated, he starts enjoying killing people. The power he acquires through this magical item is being able to dictate when a person will die and how that person will die. So he doesn't actually cultivate some kind of elaborate plan to organize the world into a better version. He acts very simplistically by killing people one at a time. So actually his actions doesn't have that much impact on the world, but having the power to dictate when a person will die gives some kind of high to this character, and he feels like it makes him feel powerful, and it pumps up his ego. So I am wondering whether he is actually an ISTP or an INTP, but ISTP perhaps because killing people gives him a high. So he doesn't organize or rally people around him. He just acts individually. And I found that he is, in the poster, he is identified as INFJ, but this is not a correct typing. But I am wondering whether he is not an ENTJ, as I said, actually an ISTP, and as you know, ISTP's tertiary and inferior functions make an INFJ through an INFE. So perhaps he is indeed an ISTP, and people think he is acting like an INFJ. I am not sure. Anyway, also another ENTJ character is, I guess, Sauron from Lord of the Rings movie. As you know, Sauron wants to organize the world and dominate people of the Middle-earth and bring order in his own mind, bring order to the Middle-earth, even at the expense of existing residents of Middle-earth. Also, Littlefinger from Game of Thrones could also be an ENTJ. He is very calculating. He is not directly aggressive, he rather collects knowledge about what's going on around him, and he tries to scheme, so he tries to develop some schemes to make use of the developments around him, and whatever other people are scheming, he tries to bend other people's schemes to his advantage somehow, or to gain knowledge about things or people to exert influence on them. But I am still not sure, because he is not acting like a commander and acting more individually. So he could also be an INTP, but when need be, he can be very articulate and convincing, and I guess he is using SE sometimes. So ENTJ is also possible. He runs a brothel, so he runs a business. He knows how to run a business, how to make use of opportunities. So ENTJ is possible, I guess. So I relate ENTJ to the Magus class in role-playing games. Magus class is a sorcerer fighter, some kind of sorcerer and fighter mix. because ENTJs have an eye, and which I relate to magic casting and spell casting abilities, ability to use magic. I think ENTJs are prime in relation to role-playing game classes. ENTJs would be a class who primarily uses magic and also could use fight close combat abilities, which I associate with a C function, which is ENTJ's tertiary function. That's why I relate ENTJ to this Magus class. As you can see, they are not pure sorcerers, but they can use magic, but also can engage in close combat. Some more examples of the Magus class. And my friend whom I think to be an ENTJ also likes this Witcher game very much. I think he identifies him with this Witcher character, who also can use magic and sword at the same time. So I guess that's also an interesting coincidence. And here is this alignment, role-playing game alignment chart I made, and I have recently revised this. This chart is made up of chaos, low, axis, and masculine, feminine, or in other words, evil, good axis. I distributed 16 MBTI class types on this chart, on this coordinate axis. And here is ENTJ, because I relate thinking function to masculinity, and ENTJs are thinking dominant types. I put ENTJ close to the evil side of this axis, and not as close as TI dominant types here, because I think TI dominant types are more individual based types than ENTJs, so somehow I think ENTJs are closer to being a neutral type rather than an evil type. And yeah, their individuality gives INTPs and ISTPs a less social, more individual attitude, also more thinking. This dominant thinking means that they are thinking for their own safety and their own survival, regardless of others, at the expense of others, even at the expense of others, whereas T dominant types try to order the world around them, and they are not necessarily evil, even though they might use oppressive methods. They try to organize the system so as to benefit people around them as well. So in that sense, perhaps T dominant types might be seen as, not all the time, but might sometimes be benevolent dictators, I guess. So I relate ENTJ to the Magus class in role-play games, and the true neutral alignment. This is the true neutral is actually on this axis. around somewhere here. Because ENTJ, for instance, the ISTJ is an SI dominant type. They are more rule oriented. They are moral based because they are SI in a dominant position. Their primary mode of acting is on tradition and law. But ESTJ SI function is in the auxiliary position, meaning they are lawful but not as lawful as ISTJ, and ENTJ's auxiliary function is NI, which is not related to tradition, so they have their own understanding of way of doing things. They have their own NI way of doing things, more optimized or more revolutionary or more futuristic way of doing things, which might not always be aligned, which might not always align with the existing traditions SI. So I moved them closer to neutrality on the superego, low end chaos axis as well. So this area is true neutrality area. So I guess they are true neutral with true neutral type with evil tendencies. Perhaps they can act evilly, shift more towards here and or shift more towards the neutral axis here, do more good depending on the circumstance, I guess. So this area is the TE quadrant. There are 4 quadrants: TI, FI, FE, TE. This is the TE quadrant. Their motto is opportunist collectivism. Resistance is futile, like in the Borg society in Star Trek. And I relate TE domain to material domain, industry, structure, respect, power. And I relate TE types to dwarves and humans in Lord of the Rings settings. As you know, dwarves are very industrious and industrious types. They mine ores, etc., and they make machines, etc. So they are industrial. They also value wealth, valuable things, material things. So that's why this is T domain. I relate to dwarves and humans. ISTJ and INTJ T auxiliary types, I moved them onto the neutrality axis here. I guess ISTJ is lawful neutral and INTJ is true neutral. And because INTJ has auxiliary TE and also inferior SE, they are not as masculine as an ENTJ, and their SE means they are not as aggressive as an ENTJ. So I moved them closer to here, and ESTJ and ISTJ are here. So that's all I can tell you about the ENTJ type. So I look forward to your comments. Bye.